Welcome back. Episode 7, Second Look Sports Show. Excited to be back. I did not get a chance to be on for the episode 6. Everything went smoothly, of course. I am Alex Mandarino, joined by Justin Arnberg. We have Sarah Matt, our producer today. Exciting stuff. Brandon will be with JD Bunkus podcast, so he will not be joining us today, but he's with us in spirit. So we're happy that he is around. A lot of stuff going on this week, mainly in our personal lives, guys. You guys had some pretty exciting stuff that went on. I think mainly, Justin, yours was last night. So before we get into the sports world, I guess at least from more of a league perspective, Justin, why don't you start us off with how the game last night was with the Leafs?
It was pretty boring, to be honest. Like, it was a pretty boring game.
Yeah.
In terms of like the actual play on the ice, there wasn't much in like that. Like it was a 2-1 game. Like there was a goal in the first period. There was a goal in the second period. Or sorry, two goals in the first period by Minnesota. No goals in the second period and a goal in the third period. But it just like it felt like dead the whole night. Like the building just like
Mm.
the energy was just sucked out of the building from the minute the puck dropped. No one on the Leafs team really like had any good chances except for I want to say Austin Matthews rang one off the crossbar or post, a wicked release. And then Nylander again got another breakaway. He gets like one a game I think now, and rang it off the crossbar, beating Gustafsson clean. He beat him out, like he beat him so clean. And then yeah, just rang it off the crossbar. But overall, really good night. Really happy. I went with Ryan Dixon. Um, so I was the first time like actually as credentialed media underneath
Yeah.
Sportsnet. So that was really cool. Got to like be a part of the scrums afterwards, got to see how everything works with the press conference with Craig Brube. But just the first of many, hopefully. So yeah, that's how it was.
Exciting, exciting. You say that only a couple Leafs got a chance, but Matthews actually scored. It just was for his own team, the puck
Oh,
deflecting off his
oh.
stick for that second goal. So a little bit misconstrued. I know it's exciting with the bright lights there, Justin, but I just thought I'd correct you there. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Nah.
Dude, I understand those like midweek games, sometimes the Monday night games, the midweek games at Scotiabank Arena, if you've been, but even if you watched on TV as a fan or whatever the case is, like they're basically it's like watching Pee Wee hockey sometimes in terms
Yeah.
of there's no involvement, like there's just no excitement, and they often lose, I find. So
I
uh
gotta like where I'm gonna mention on them a little bit later in the show, but like
yeah.
the only thing I wanted to add right now is it just it felt um it felt like no one was able to generate much, especially for a game where this is your last home game for like a month and a half or a month. Because you're not playing there until February 22nd with the Four Nations break, and they're on the road up until Four Nations. So like you would have thought like, especially after how they played Saturday night against Ottawa, they would have came out with a little more energy, a little more juice, but they came out flat-footed, it felt like. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, last home game. Yeah, it's almost to be expected at some point, though. You'd think for these guys, they're very hot and cold this year. But from one game with not a lot of atmosphere to one that had like a ton, I saw so many people at this event. Sarah, you were lucky enough to cover it. This is the PWHL Battle on Bay Street. Sirens at Scotiabank Arena to take on the Scepters. What was that experience like for you, and what was sort of your takeaway from that game?
Yeah, that was an incredible experience. Sportsnet wanted that game covered, and then they realized they didn't really have any of their regular staff available to cover it. Um, so they asked me to go, which was wild to cover my first. So I had never been to a PWHL game before, and then to spend my first one in the press box was pretty cool. Um, but yeah, the atmosphere was insane. Even getting there, like taking the train in from Oakville, I saw so many Scepters jerseys like on the train with me, which can feel pretty normal for like a Leafs game or like a Jays game. But for a Scepters game, I haven't really seen that before, so that was really cool. And then yeah, just getting to watch like the excitement around the sport, and like the Scepters really held on for that game to win it at home. But then also just the excitement around getting to play on this like big stage, getting to play in this arena was really cool. Hannah Miller actually, she
Yeah.
ended up
What?
scoring twice
Yeah.
for the Raptors, and it's a pretty cool story because last year at the Battle on Bay Street, they also won. And she also scored in that game. So like just put Hannah Miller on the big stage, guys, because she's unstoppable. So it was cool. And then just getting to do
Yeah.
interviews and stuff afterwards. That was really fun. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, she deserves a spotlight for sure. Sarah Nurse with the winner late as well.
Yes.
What a game to
Yes.
go to for like the first WHL game. It's not at like Coca-Cola Coliseum. It's just like at Scotiabank Arena. Cool.
Yeah.
Here's the big one right away. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I have tickets to one.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, I have tickets to one in Ottawa like next month, and I thought that would be my first one, you know, a little bit more low key, that kind of thing. No, just throw me in the deep end, but should be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Get right in there. That's awesome. You guys had some cooler experiences. I know us on the radio side had a chance, the three of us in the internship, to sit in the radio booth where Jim Ralph and Joe Bowen do their calls for games, for Leaf games. Those are really exciting. We've all had a chance to go check those out. Probably the coolest experience I've had within the last year. And us as sports journalists in the program at Centennial had a lot of cool experiences, but truthfully, that was probably the best one. So exciting stuff all around. You guys this week obviously
Future
took it home and kind
play-by-play
of had
caller, eh?
some cool ones. We'll see. I mean, maybe he's got one sheet of paper, Joe does, and he reads off of it. So doesn't seem like there's a lot of technology necessary. Just 45 years of experience and an incredible voice. That's all it takes. And he has both of those. We'll move on. We'll get into some actual sports. It's mainly from the Canadian perspective. So Team Canada is looking for a replacement on defense. Alex Pietrangelo decided, this is sort of a weird announcement, but basically pulled out of the tournament, citing that he had an ailment he wanted to deal with. What was weird is that it was been reported all season he's missed a couple of games, I think, in December, but nothing that's kept him out for a long period of time or anything that would be understandably attended to. Now, he's an older player, he's in his 30s, but sort of a strange story all around. Before we get into the replacements, Justin, I know we don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but like, what was your perspective of when you first saw this go down sort of like the timeline?
So you get a thing that says on Sunday, I think it was like 30 minutes before the Bills kickoff, to be honest, um, that this guy, Alex Pietrangelo, is going to be withdrawing from Team Canada because of an ailment, like you said. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they played that night, and he also played that night, and then he also played 20 plus minutes that night. That's kind of crazy, to like play that after withdrawing because of an injury. I like I understand it from like I gotta get healthy, but like why are you playing games right now? Like that's the part that doesn't sit well with me. Because the NHL wants to treat this like, hey, if you're healthy enough to play a game, you're healthy enough to go play this game. Like the Four Nations. Like they're trying to make this the best thing that the best that they can. And if you have players, big name players, because this is best on best, are wanting to pull out because they're risking injury for the rest of the NHL season, it doesn't have a great look on not only the league but the team and the Four Nations. But yeah, that's kind of where I was at with this whole situation. I'm not gonna sit here and like say like don't recover from an injury. I do understand that side of things, but it's just like how can you withdraw from this thing if you're playing 20 plus minutes a night, continuing to do so after you already said this injury is bothering you? That's the part that bothers me.
Yeah. It almost feels like he had this decision made like months ago and he was just waiting to say it at the perfect time almost, or it was already something that was in his mind. And I'm not putting thoughts into his head. This is just like speculation, but yeah, it sort of sets the tone of like this tournament isn't very important. It's just sort of a lead up tournament to the Olympics, which I'm sure all players will be focused on because that seems to be the true test of best on best. But yeah, when you see players like William Karlsson and Jacob Markstrom who have true injuries that are still probably trying to play and then ultimately won't, from my understanding, it just sort of it ruins a bit of the sanctity of what the NHL is trying to set up.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
But We have to move on and decide how to replace Alex Pietrangelo. 35-year-old might be replaced by another 35-year-old, but he might be replaced by a younger player. Some of the players in contention right now are Drew Doughty, who he himself played his first game last night against the Florida Panthers. Not a great game for the Kings, but happy to have their defenseman back. Also 35 years old. So he's in the running. He's made Hockey Canada known throughout his recovery process how interested he is in filling that role. Some other possible replacements, at least as reported by Sportsnet, is Mackenzie Weegar, Evan Bouchard, and then the Toronto Maple Leafs' Chris Tanev. So I have a thought in mind of as to who would be the likely replacement, Justin, but who do you think should be the replacement for Alex Pietrangelo?
So that's a key word. Who's the likely and who should be? Because the likely
Yeah,
one is Drew Doughty. Do I think he should be? No. Uh, the simple answer is I think Drew Doughty is a phenomenal Canadian athlete and definitely should be on the team, but he should be on the team for the Olympics in 2026. The reason being is he's missed the whole season with this gruesome leg injury that he recovered from back in I think it was spring training or preseason game. Um,
preseason, yeah.
and he's coming back 5 games before Four Nations. I don't think that's enough time to get all the rust off. If you want him there for leadership, sure, I can understand that. But in my opinion, you snubbed Mackenzie Weegar on December 4th. And you can't do it again, in my opinion. This guy has been unbelievable this year. He he is the best defenseman by far on not by far, but like because you have Rasmus Anderson, but he's the best defenseman on Calgary this year. And just the way
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be able to fill that role, I really don't think that there would be a better option. I get the argument for Doughty, but like I said, he's got so much rust that he's got to work off. And how confident are you that he's going to be up to game speed? Because there's a difference between game speed at the first game of the season and game speed 41 games into a season. So yeah, that for that reason, like I'm leaning more towards Uyghur right now.
Yeah, I think I have to agree in terms of both perspectives, actually. Not fun for the debate conversation here, but I think the idea of replacing Petrangelo, a lot of people jump to the idea of who's the next best player. And I think you have to look at it from the perspective of who is the player that most resembles who is now out in Alex Pietrangelo. So I think that's why Drew Doughty is probably at the front of the conversation, both from
Yeah.
Hockey Canada, because he's been a foot soldier before. He's a two-time gold medalist. So he has the pedigree of someone who's played in the
Oh yeah.
NHL and won cups, right? And the Olympics. But that to say, the Kings probably don't want him to go because, hey, you're back for us. We're looking to make a playoff run and you're going to go play 4 extra games. And who knows what happens in those tournaments. It's sort of a risky decision for players to go and put their body on the line, much the reason probably why Pietrangelo is not going. So I do think that if I were selecting players, I think I'd pick Mackenzie Weegar, like you're suggesting.
Yeah, like
Good
this
defenseman on the
season,
back
he's
end
not gonna like it's
he's
not
been
gonna
having.
be like a super offensive defenseman, and that's not what you need. You already have that filled. Like Mackenzie Weegar's stats on the season are 6 goals, 25 points in 49 games, and he's averaging
Yeah.
23.5 minutes a night. Like he's gonna kill minutes. Like that's what you need. He's obviously bought into playing for Team Canada. He came out and said like I got a vacation down to Mexico, but anytime I get the call, I'm ready to cancel
Yeah, I
that
love that
baby.
line.
Like he is ready to play for this nation. Give it to him. You snubbed him the first time, don't snub him again. That's where I'm going to leave this before we move on.
Yeah, like Travis Sanheim got added. I think a lot of people got a little bit confused. And if you're looking for power play guys, like you have Kale McCarr, you're not looking for an Evan Bouchard to fill the role and step in on PP1 or PP2. You're looking for that big body. The only thing I'm thinking is Mackenzie Weegar's 6 foot and Petrangelo's like 6'3". So you're missing a bit of size on the back end, but that's hard to replace in any capacity. So tough bounce, and hopefully that's the only player that has to step away. Hopefully this isn't causing a domino or ripple effect here And Vegas stays in the headlines as they probably should, and often for negative reasons. They're like the Death Star to the NHL Star Wars because
Yeah.
of Heiskanen's injury, or if that is how you pronounce it. So we'll get into that. But basically, the injury itself. Or do you want to address whatever drama occurred? I
I
didn't really
don't
follow too
care.
much on
Like,
our
no,
Instagrams.
no, no, no.
Go.
Apparently, I pronounced Heiskanen wrong. I've only ever
Is
heard
that how you pronounced it?
As someone was telling me, it could be Heiskanen. It's Heiskanen or Heiskanen. It's either or. Um,
Yeah.
I've always heard it as Heiskanen. Miro Heiskanen. Like that's the
Yeah.
way I've always heard it. But anyways,
I think so too.
what happened is I did a short little breakdown on the what we're about to talk about actually, and yeah, someone commented that I absolutely butchered the name. I think it was a Dallas Stars fan. So he's just taking defense to his favorite team, and I understand that. So yeah, that's on me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
let's just keep in mind that he did apologize afterwards. He said that he likes what we're doing
Yeah.
and he's sorry that he came in too hot on that comment.
That's
So,
hilarious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all is good.
yeah,
Probably not happy that Heiskanen is going to be out for a while. And that just, I know we'll move on to this conversation, but that's like Martin Necas. Like I've heard Nekis. I've heard so many pronunciations. Ultimately, like we're not pronouncing it right because there's a Czech way of saying it, or in Miro's case, there's a
yeah.
Finnish way of pronouncing it, and
There
that's
was a
just that's
yeah, there
names.
was a Finnish guy that actually commented on the post as well and said like for a non-Finnish guy it's a pretty good pronunciation of Miro
Yeah.
Heiskanen.
Yeah. So take the wins, I guess.
Yeah.
All that to say, we do have to react to what happened Tuesday night. Dallas was in Vegas to take on the Golden Knights, and about 10, 12 minutes left in the third. Heiskanen's bringing the puck out of his defensive zone. Mark Stone trips, and basically his head lands right onto Miro Heiskanen's left leg. If you saw the video, not the best reaction, not the best viz, as his knee sort of buckles in towards his inner part of his body, and he went down immediately. Was taken off the ice, and a scrum ensued. A lot of people are really split on what happened. No update on Heiskanen, to my understanding. I've heard
Not yet. I'm
ACL, I've
sure
heard
it's gonna come
MCL, right?
today. We're gonna
Yeah,
find out today.
we'll
This
probably
being
have some
Thursday,
reaction.
January 30th instead of the
And
31st.
no, absolutely. We'll probably have some type of update for the fans, but didn't look great. He's probably going to miss some time.
Yeah.
And basically, there's been some debate on whether it was or was not a dirty play or was it intentional. I think what's causing some strife back and forth is that Mark Stone seemed to trip right over Rupe Hint's stick and then obviously land directly onto Heiskanen's leg. And so a lot of people are looking at it both ways. Dallas coach Peter DeBoer after the game, this is his quote: "I coach Mark Stone. He's not a dirty player. He's not trying to hurt anybody. I know that. That doesn't mean they can't call a 5-minute major, or at least look at it." That was my argument. Justin, what's your argument for what this play looked like and how it should be assessed?
So it was called a 2-minute tripping penalty on the initial or like on the play. That's what the penalty was called for Mark Stone. Um, I know I break it down a little bit, and it's a lot easier to do with video, but you can see Rupe Hintz. He gets his stick in Mark Stone's skate, and by the look of things, I talked to actually the guy on Second Looks Hockey, Christian Chinidi, about this yesterday, and he said he thinks like by looking at it, he doesn't get as much of like the skate he thinks as what it looks like, and he thinks that Mark Scone, I want a scone. That's how early it is right now. He thinks that Mark Stone realized what like Rupe Hintz did, and more so like was diving to try and get a call or like whatever. But yeah, he thought it was like he thought that Mark Stone didn't mean to intentionally hurt him. I kind of see it in the sense of Rupe Hensk did get a part of that skate, and Mark Stone was just falling. I don't think he meant to head dive into his knee whatsoever. I
Hmm.
really don't see that being anything. But yeah, that's kind of where I was at with this, and then to think what Peter DeBoer said afterwards, and saying like he knows Mark Stone's not a dirty player. I do understand why like you would want a 5 minute in that situation though. It is not knee on knee, it's head on knee, and you're taking a guy out. Unfortunately, he's going to be out with injury for a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think this is more so an accident than a dirty play.
Yeah. I was so surprised to see the amount of people on X like commenting about how dirty of a play it was, and like, oh, like former players that had played the game on different outlets saying it was a dirty play. And in a little bit of a way, it was frustrating because I do find that in hockey more than other sports, there's this tendency to like gatekeep if you've played hockey before and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, you've never played, you have no idea what goes on out there. I know what I'm talking about. And it
Yeah.
doesn't happen all the time, but in situations like this, sometimes I find that that does occur, and then it sort of isolates the casual, or it isolates someone who hasn't covered the sport before, when we're trying to be an inclusive sport is hockey. So it's a little frustrating when you see people being like, this is a dirty play. This is not a dirty play. Like, I don't understand how this is decided as, oh, he like lunged for his leg. If you're being tripped, and even if you don't catch the whole skate, you're playing at a high pace. And if you're already a little bit off balance trying to get the puck, Heiskanen is a
Yes.
wizard out there. He's a
And
great puck handler, right? It's not a dirty play. Like, he's
not to
falling and it's an
mention
unfortunate incident.
not to mention skates are not like you know, it's not like you're planted with your own feet on the ground. Like it's a blade that
Yes.
you're relying on. And if that goes the
Yeah.
wrong way for 1 second, you're taking a spill. And
Yeah.
what can cause that? A stick. Like
The stick.
I don't know. Like it just it's like it's not that dirty of a play to me. I feel bad for Miro. He's having a good year. Um,
Yes.
but I just look at that and I'm like, it's not dirty. It's just an unfortunate accident that happened at a high paced game at a professional level. That's all that it is.
Yeah. And you'll have those plays happen all the time. Miro Heiskanen, 4 or 5 times he's been in the top 12 for Norris Trophy voting. Not the biggest point getter, but easily one of the top ice minute munchers out there. So
Yeah.
tough for him, tough for Dallas, who's probably a Stanley Cup contender, and hopefully a speedy recovery. I think if anybody other than Mark Stone or the Vegas Golden Knights was involved here, it wouldn't be this big conversation. But this is the situation that is ahead of us. So we'll wait updates on him and hope that he recovers swiftly. We'll move on to the WNBA. Trades and free agency season, a lot going on. I'll admit I'm not as locked in on what's going on. So I think as a result, Sarah, our producer, we're going to bring you on board. We want to have some conversation about what's been going on as of late. I'm actually going to step away because I'm not super locked into what's going on. Sarah, maybe do you want to sort of introduce what some of the biggest topics are and maybe get a conversation going for us here?
Yeah, for sure. I can start by we'll go like topic by topic and I'll recap what's going on. So free
Yeah.
agency is obviously happening right now within the league. And one thing that's really, really cool that makes this really a unique situation compared to even other leagues is um, the Unrivaled League, which is a 3-on-3 women's basketball league that just started this year. They're currently in the middle of play. It's based out of, I think, Miami, somewhere in Florida. And what happens is 36 players are living in very close proximity. They're playing on these, I think it's 6 different teams. Um, and they're all like living near each other, playing near each other, spending all their time around each other. Meanwhile, free agency is also happening. So teams are coming in to meet with these players in this very, very close proximity. So all of a sudden, like the emotions, the drama, the trades, everything is heightened because all the players know what's going on with other players because of the time they're just spending among each other, which is very cool because I think that that adds to the excitement in a way, maybe not so cool for the athletes themselves who are stuck in the middle of this, a little bit of drama, but especially for the fans that are going out to watch these games, you can really see, even on TV, like the excitement that's around all that's happening there right now. So that's really cool for the league. And so a result of that was this big 3-team trade that we saw, I think it was the end of last week, where we saw Jewel
No,
Lloyd.
I think it was the beginning of this week.
Oh, yeah? My
Yeah.
time is all messed up, but very recent. We saw Jewel Lloyd and the number 13 pick in 2025 draft from LA. Both of these went to the Aces, and then the Sparks got Kelsey Plum, which was huge from the Aces, because she's been a really big veteran presence and just incredible player for them. And the Sparks also got the number 9 pick in the 2025 draft from Seattle. And then they got a second rounder next year's draft, also from Seattle. And then the Seattle Storm got the number 2 pick in this year's draft, which was pretty interesting for the Sparks to give up, because I mean, there's a lot of good talent coming in this year in the draft. So number 2 pick is given up to the Storm, and then they also got Lee Yuru, and then they also got a first rounder in next year's draft from the Aces. So a lot of stuff went around.
But
Yeah.
we had a conversation on off air about this. Why was the second overall pick, do you think, dealt most likely?
I think, and like I've done a little bit of research on it, so a lot of players that can be available for this draft also still have some more eligibility left in the NCAA. And there's also going to be a new CBA that's kind of being negotiated right now. I think it's going to come into play next year. And so the thought is that if these players that can declare for the draft this year, but they also have eligibility left, if they remain in the NCAA for another year, then they can take advantage of that new CBA agreement if they join the league next year instead of this year. And so because of that, maybe the pool that will be available at this draft is not as valuable as the pool that can be available later. And so it might be better to try and get like good players, like for the Aces, Jewel Lloyd, or for the Sparks, Kelsey Plum, instead of trying to keep those draft picks.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is you were basically on this like 2 months ago. Or no, not 2 months ago, like a month and a half ago, when it was your debut show, and you said, and your second look was taking a second look at Paige Beckers, who might not declare. And
Yeah.
I remember Alex and me were kind of like, wow. Like she's undoubtedly the first overall pick if she goes out or she declares this year. But if she doesn't go, and like this is where like you're saying like the pool, I think like if you're a player like that isn't projected to even be drafted this year, but then you have these big star dropouts like Paige Beckers, maybe you declare for the WNBA only because you know that this year is a better chance than coming out in 2026. So like it could be a reverse where you come out a year early instead to go to the WNBA. Because if you wait, you might not get drafted and have an opportunity, because you might like it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think like what I'm saying is like we could see a flip-flop of like people who are supposed to go in 2026, they could end up going this year, and then people going in 2025 could end up going in 2026. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I think, the more I think about it, I do think that Paige Beckers will declare this year, because also like the money's not really an issue for her necessarily. She already has huge NIL deals, and she's getting her bag in many other places. So I think she'll be okay. But I do think you're right, Justin. I think that especially for players that are maybe on the edge of like, okay, will they even get drafted? This can be kind of a useful outcome for them to kind of capitalize on a little bit as they decide what draft to go to. So so that was that big deal, or that big trade that happened. And then after that, we saw a bunch of free agents kind of get moved around. So I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago that we saw the Phoenix Mercury get Alyssa Thomas from the Connecticut Sun, which is a huge move because she's another like MVP caliber player. Um, and she's only played with the Sun for her entire career. So she was a free agent this offseason, and then the NBA has something called like coring up, or the WNBA has something called like coring a player, which means that a team, it's kind of like a franchise tag in the NFL. But the team can like pick one player each free agency that they're going to core. But then the Sun cored Alyssa Thomas, but then they basically had full negotiating rights to her. So that's why they were able to do this trade that's not official yet. But she will be going to the Mercury. And then Brittany Griner, another big free agent move. She's moving to the Atlanta Dream. So Mercury are losing her, but don't worry, they just got Alyssa Thomas. And then Kelsey Mitchell, of course, re-signed with the Fever. So she'll be sticking around with Caitlin Clark. But it's just like all in the span of a week, bam, 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 all these free agents moving around. So it's an exciting time for the league. And I think that we're going to see a little bit of different atmospheres on some of the teams that have really looked the same for so long. Especially I think about, okay, what are the Aces without Kelsey Plum? And then like, what are the Connecticut Sun without Alyssa Thomas? And the Fever are just like keeping their momentum going, keeping on with Kelsey Mitchell. So it's going to be a little bit of unpredictable start to the next season just because we're seeing so many big names moving all around, which is exciting too.
Definitely exciting. Yeah, that's exciting stuff. But I also read too, Sarah, I don't know if you have any notes on this, but yesterday it was announced that Toronto Tempo, which just released their name not too long ago, also released yesterday their franchise's first GM, Monica Wright Rogers. So don't know much about her, but just exciting that the steps are coming into fruition for the newest NBA, the WNBA team in Toronto. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any idea of who she is, or is that just something that we'll wait and see?
I haven't done a lot of research into her yet, but I agree with you. It's so exciting seeing the Toronto Tempo making these moves. And even one thing I also noticed yesterday is their like the president, Teresa Retch, she went to a TMU game, which is cool because a lot of the time you see like these big professional leagues going to like, of course, the Raptors game or like these other places to kind of get representation or just like show up in the community. But then to also go to like a local university and kind of be like, yeah, we want to be in this space as well. It's really showing like this is going to be a team for everybody in the city, not just like they're not just about finding, okay, those corporate people that can buy tickets. It's like we want to get invested even at the lower level and go to some U Sports games. So even seeing that, I'm like, yeah, I'm excited for the energy that the Tempo are definitely going to be bringing to the Toronto sports scene. So should be fun.
Yeah. Energy. They're going to be bringing their own tempo. I mean, that's not like a dad joke. It's true. I think that's why they picked the name. The merchandise is also very solid. I was skeptical at first, but the logo, the name, it's starting to really grow on me. So I think it's important to start at the core and sort of build some grassroots programs within the city, because that's the way that the Scepters did it when they were first PWHL Toronto. And I feel like they've built a big empire only within a year and a half. And I think if the Toronto Tempo were going to find that same energy and bring the same sort of like excitement, enthusiasm, I think they're going to have to start from the ground up, like you suggested, and sort of got into those community games. And so hopefully that is the way to be successful here with so many teams.
Totally.
Exciting. So we're going to take a quick break. We have some exciting stuff. We also have a colleague and former student, because we are now former students, and colleague Ian Finlayson to talk a little bit about how the Raptors are being so dominant over the recent stretch. We'll get to him after this break. Welcome back. Episode 7, Second Look Sports Show. We got some exciting stuff coming down the pipeline for the next half hour or so of the show. Before we introduce our guest of the first guest, if I'm not mistaken, of this show, which is probably pretty exciting. Probably didn't even know he was the first guest. We'll get into that in a second. We're going to do our second look segment. So essentially, if you haven't been with us for the first 6 episodes, we're going to take a second look at something within the sports industry, the sports world, that is worth taking a second look and keeping an eye on. So, Justin, who are you taking a second look at this week?
I'm going to take a second look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. I got 2 stats for you. Which one is more concerning? Okay, 2 goals in their last 2 home games, or 3 goals in their last 3 games. Which one is more concerning for you? And you give me an
I think
answer.
the latter one, the second one, is a little bit more concerning to me.
All right. Well, that's why I'm taking a second look at them. Lack of goal scoring. Now, it's not like they have
Yeah.
struggled with this all year. They exploded for 7 against Montreal just before this. They're just going through a tough stretch. I think taking a second look doesn't always have to be a negative. It's more so looking at them and they're going through a rough patch. But I do think there's light at the end of the tunnel for this team. I think like they have too much firepower just to like not score. Now I do think there is a problem with not their 2 top lines. If they can't score, they seem to lack offense from elsewhere right now. That is something that they need to improve upon up at the trade deadline. I know we've mentioned about this before. Um, but yeah, that's why I'm taking a second look at them, and hopefully, uh, they start putting some pucks in the back of the net on this upcoming road trip. Because if not, you're not giving Joseph Wall a great opportunity to win a game, in my opinion.
I have so many thoughts on the Leafs, but we're going to save them for SLS hockey because I think that's a nice, neat way of putting it. They're not going to have any chance. Without being successful in front of Joseph Wall, they let Hildeby just sort of sit there, like 4 goals in his last 3 games and run support. I'm going to stop. I'm going to move on before we take forever. That's a good second look. Kind of keep an eye on them. I'm also going to stick in the NHL, but I'm going to take a second look at whatever hockey name gets bestowed on the Utah Hockey Club. It's a complete debacle there. There's a lot of nuance to the story, but to essentially break it down as quick as possible, originally the Utah Hockey Club was going to patent Utah Yeti or Utah Yetis for their new hockey nickname. A lot of discussion about the patent office basically suggesting that that was going to be causing confusion amongst the public. I think anything to do with a name that's already real, Blizzard, Venom, was basically shut down by the patent office. And so Utah had to sort of pivot, and they selected 3 names that is going to be voted upon for all of the fans that are going to the next 4 home games in Utah for 2 logos and 3 possible names. 2 of those nicknames will have a shared logo if necessary. The 3 names are the Utah Mammoth, the Utah Hockey Club, and the Utah Wasatch, which is a mountain range that takes up
Yeah.
Utah. Apparently about 85% of the population in Utah live within a 15-mile radius of that mountain range.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
It's
they're all
you could have went with
garbage.
I was actually talking because I like this I like this second look. I was actually talking with Ryan last night about Utah, and he brought up
Mhm.
Utah canyons just because they're in the
Okay.
canyons, they have mountains behind them. I think that's a decent one that probably could have been brought to the table. It sucks. It really does because
Yeah.
Yeti was the obvious one. Yeti was the best one. Utah, they could have done a great job with that. They could have had a Yeti mascot. They might still have one. I really don't understand how you can confuse a hockey team with the actual idea of a Yeti. That's the part that doesn't get me. I'm not in the
Yeah.
patent novice, so like I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm an expert on that, but it just doesn't make sense, and it sucks because now they have to go with a lesser option. And if we're gonna take a guess on which one it would be, it's probably gonna be Mammoth, in my opinion. Um,
That would be mine. Yeah.
yeah, like the other one that you were saying, I don't even know what that is. Like before you explain
It's
that, like I've never even heard that before. So
Yeah, the logo is planning to be, I think if it's hockey club or if it's like Wasatch. Again, I'll be apologies for mispronouncing the mountain range. I don't think it's going to get offended. It can't. But all that to say, it's going to be the same logo, and it's supposed to be like a mythical creature. Mammoth obviously will be a mammoth. I
yeah,
know Utah Outlaws was one we talked about on SLS Hockey recently. I thought Outlaws would be cool. You can come up with like a Western like robber and sort of like a share of chasing him throughout the stadium. Like I feel like that could be lending itself to some cool options. But I know for Yetis, there was also a coexistence I guess, contract that the actual Yeti company wasn't willing to agree on with the Yetis in terms of like having a similar name. I thought that would be great marketing ploy. You could have merch, you could have so many different opportunities to kind of showcase both products. But all that to say, not exciting. We'll have updates obviously as they come down the pipeline in terms of which name is suggested. We'll move off hockey. We'll head to some excitement in Toronto Raptors land in the NBA. Our first guest of Second Look Sports is Sportsnet.ca's Ian Finlayson.
I think we have him on the
welcome
line
to the Second Look
or
Sports
in the
pod. We
call.
got him on the line.
I think we
We
got
definitely
him.
have him on the call.
I think
He's
we
in
got
the
him.
mix.
There he is.
Ian, first of all, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. I did not know that I was the first guest, so very cool. I don't know how much Raptors you guys have been chatting either, how much NBA you've been getting into, but I feel like this is a pretty new topic for the show as well.
I started the chat last week when I said I'm cheering for the Toronto Raptors. So, you know, in my cheering from the press box segment, I don't know if you listened to the show, but that's where this started, and they've continued that hot streak. So I guess my cheering's worked out pretty good.
Yeah, you gotta keep doing it, man. Given how things have gone, I guess as of late.
Yeah,
I will say, well, so I think the biggest place to start really is like how it's one of those seasons where it's obviously been negative to start. I think a lot of people anticipated it being this team where, yep, it's a lot of rookies, it's a lot of young players. And so a lot of people maybe swept this team under the rug if you're not a massive Toronto sports fan. But of late, they've kind of made it hard, the Raptors have, to look away. 7 of their last 8, 5-game winning streak are they on, and not necessarily just against like the lower end of the tier in terms of the NBA. Yes, you did beat the Pelicans. Yes, you did beat teams like the Hawks and most recently the Wizards, but you've also taken down the Celtics and Bucks within this past stretch. So I guess the more blanket question, Ian, if it's easy to answer, is like what has contributed most to this most recent success for the Toronto Raptors?
Well, the biggest factor has been their defense has kind of flipped on its head, right? Through the first 39 games of the season, they were ranked 28th in the league in defense. I think it was a 117.8 defensive rating. They've been first through the last 8 games, which is an absurd swing, right? It's kind of, when you look at it at first, it's kind of shocking. But it's really been driven a lot by Scotty Barnes. He's had arguably the best defensive stretch of his career. And then if you look at it, it also coincides with Davion Mitchell's, reintroduction to the starting lineup. 8 games ago, Emmanuel quickly went back on the injury report. He's got a strained left hip. Still no updates have been given there really as far as a timeline for his return. It's just kind of indefinite. And Davion Mitchell kind of perfectly fits the Raptors defensive scheme as far as what they're trying to do on the ball. He's, he has his nickname Off Night, right? When you're going up against him, you're gonna have an off night, and he just has that reputation as being one of the best point of attack defenders in the world, really. Obviously, there's tons of other rough edges to his game, and he's really was falling out of the rotation both last year for the Kings and this year for the Raptors. Yeah, the combination of those two players has really driven the huge uptick in defense and kind of galvanized the team a little bit.
Yeah, so with all this winning, does it does it hurt their chances, or do you even think they need like a Cooper Flag to like, yeah, we're going like the team's going through a rebuild, but like, do you think that they're at a point with this team where they don't need, say, the number 1 overall pick to like really launch the rebuild further and like actually start winning games? Or do you think like if they continue winning, like this team can go add someone in free agency perhaps instead and go try and win that way? Like a Brandon Ingram is what I've been seeing recently.
So I think the Raptors are in a really good spot, honestly, as far as projecting to the future. From an outsider view, if you're not following the team too closely, maybe from a league wide view, it might appear they're in a bad spot. But early in the season, they were kind of they kind of garnered that reputation for being the most ethical tank or the most watchable tank. Just because they were winning a ton of close games. It seemed like they were in almost every single game. They had a stretch of something like 8 games where like 7 of them were decided by like 2 possessions or less kind of thing. So I mean, I think the Raptors, to answer your question, I don't think they need the top pick definitely to succeed. Obviously it wouldn't hurt. Like
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
like
yeah.
someone like Cooper Flag, like I think as things stand right now, the Raptors are sixth in what they call the reverse standings. Gives them like 9% odds at the first pick. Washington, the last place team, would have 14% odds. So you look, it's funny because last night really was such a great marker of like, the two drastically different ways that like a tank or a rebuild can look, because the Wizards just look like miserable.
Yeah, they
There's
look
nothing good happening
yeah.
there.
You
Like,
can't
so
even
it's like,
there's nothing positive coming out of that team right now. So
No.
like, yeah.
yeah, whereas the Raptors have a ton of good stuff going for them. Like they have 4 rookies this year who have all like, you kind of safely say exceeded expectations and have played really strong minutes and shown flashes of stuff that they can develop going forward. Scotty Barnes, like he hasn't taken another leap this year, but he continues to be a player that like drives winning in so many ways all over the floor. Like as a playmaker, defensively, he's kind of built out his mid-range game this year. We've seen that a lot over this recent stretch as well. Over the last 10 games, he's actually sixth in the league here in field goal attempts from 8 to 16 feet. Right in there with names like Devin Booker, DeMar DeRozan, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So he's taking a ton of mid-range attempts. We've seen the efficiency slowly ticking up. He seems like incredibly comfortable in that area of the floor, like getting to his own shot. And that's been opening up, a ton, because now defenses they know he wants to go there. They're going to react differently to him. He's able to manipulate from that space. So yeah, like the Raptors, I don't honestly think they're too far off from getting back into looking to compete. Like adding a good player in the draft, like you said, maybe adding another piece. Historically, they haven't really been able to do that through free agency. They haven't been a free agent destination. Probably
Yeah.
the best free agent signings in the last decade are like Dennis Schroeder and DeMar Carroll. But yeah,
Whoa. Couldn't you say Serge Ibaka?
no, that was a trade for Terrence Ross with
Oh
the
yeah, that
with the
was
with
from the
yeah with the
Magic.
Magic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
so you can't even say that. I guess they got him to re-sign, but like
Yeah.
that was really it. So yeah, my bad.
Yeah. So but I don't think they're incredibly far off from getting back into the picture there. Obviously, adding like one of the better prospects from this upcoming draft, like even if it isn't Cooper Flag, even if it's like an Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, or BJ Edgecombe is a name. He's been really playing well lately, and he's a tremendous defender, and kind of really fits into what they want to do on that end. So adding someone like that definitely wouldn't hurt.
Scotty Barnes, you mentioned some of his successful attempts at essentially becoming more of a complete player this season. I just wanted to follow up on that. First time he was in his career is named Eastern Conference Player of the Week last week. Is he a number one player on a like NBA championship team? Or do you think in order for the Raptors to be successful moving forward, you'll need more of a number one player? And if Scotty's not there yet, what is the part of his game that he would need to improve on in order for him to be like that number one go-to guy on the Raptors?
Well, what I was just referring to as far as him growing out his ability to isolate, his ability to shoot from the mid range, him like he's taking the opportunity this year to really experiment and work on his development there. Like, is it the most optimal thing for the Raptors to win for him to be taking, a super high volume of more difficult mid-range attempts? No, probably not. But right now he has he's in the right environment where he can experiment with that skill and try to develop it. And he's doing it. I think that's absolutely the right thing for him to be doing. Answering the question if he's a number one option, that's a big question. It's a very tough question to answer. I think there's a lot of people who don't think that. There are plenty of analysts and really smart people around the team who do condone Scotty Barnes as being a future superstar, future All NBA player, and like a very unique one at that as well, right? Like I mentioned, he impacts winning in so many different ways. Like his stretch of defense lately he's been playing All NBA level defense. I have yeah, he has 37 blocks plus steals in the month of January. Sixth, it's tied with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one behind Anthony Davis. And he's just like he's a Tasmanian devil. He's a tornado of terror on defense. He just destroys everything. Like ruins so many offensive actions. He's so long, so athletic. You pair that with incredible instincts. And just like a huge motor to an incredible amount of effort. And he just has everything going from him that end. And he's just been absolutely nullifying other teams' drives. It's been so difficult for other teams to get to the hoop when he comes in as a help side defender. So like he drives winning on that end. On offense, incredible, like 99th percentile like NBA playmaker, both with the eye test and an actual assist rate. I do think that Scottie Barnes, I think there is a pathway to him being a number one player. I do think they would need to add a very strong scorer alongside him because I don't necessarily think that is he's a multifaceted player, right? He's not that pure scorer that you're going to go to. I think in those moments. Mm-hmm. Although with the way his mid range game has been looking lately, it's been looking incredibly smooth. So I guess you never know.
So I just want to quickly follow up with that. You're saying it's like kind of hard to see like right now because of where he's at, like the progression, and then sometimes it's a lack of honestly progression that we're seeing out of him. He's 4 years into his career right now. Like, do you not think we're at a point where like we know what he's going to be, or are we still like we're uncertain of what the potential with him actually is?
I think there's still room to grow. I think I've had this conversation a little bit other times recently as well. I think that there's a bit of a misconception with how the way development works in the NBA and maybe perhaps in sports in general as well. With players get to their early to mid 20s, 23, 24, 25, and you know who they are, and the development arc kind of stops there. I mean, for some specific and then Raptors specific examples, you look at a player like DeMar DeRozan, who constantly continued to build out his game every single offseason. He tried to add something to his game. He went to the Spurs, and his assists spiked, and he was able to work as like a second side creator and a pick and roll ball handler effectively, and improve his ability to make passing reads. And that wasn't until he was in his late 20s or early 30s kind of thing. You look at the way Pascal Siakam continuously built out his game every single year, adding a mid-range shot, adding a 3-point shot early in his career, continuing to grow again as a playmaker and making reacting to defenses, making reads. So no, I certainly at 23 years old, I certainly don't think Scottie Barnes is a finished product. I think you see that in the things he's working on night in, night out with his game, and the way the Raptors are experimenting with him, like he was taking a shot of threes earlier in the year. That I don't always necessarily love. I think it's too many early clock shots, too many pull-ups that are really suited for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Scottie. No, I don't think he's a finished product yet. I think there is still a ceiling to reach.
And that's fair. I when you started mentioning about that, I thought to like DeMar DeRozan, like you mentioned, and Siakam. But then I also thought smaller examples of that would be like Norman Powell, who just kept on constantly growing and growing over time. And then even like I personally thought I saw a little bit of growth between years for Delon Wright when he was with the Raptors. Like he went from no minutes basically to being the backup point guard, and it felt like, and Fred VanVleet as well. So that whole bench core that kind of developed together, like you said, it wasn't like they were finished products, and that's a good thing for Scottie Barnes, who can keep on adding to what he's already got in his bag. But I actually wanted to mention about the team and what we can potentially see from them going past this February 6th, I believe, trade deadline. Who do you think is on the way out? And like, who do you think Yak can go? I did see, and I wanted to bring this up to you just because I know you went to the game the other night with Grange. Grange put out that the only two untouchables would be Scotty and Grady. Do you think that makes sense? Like, it's kind of hard to sit here and think like RJ's not unprotected, or as is like unprotected, like, or Quickly's like who you just signed to a max contract is like you're willing to talk him. Like, do you think those are the only two unprotectables, or do you think there are like, or sorry, the only two protectables, or do you think there are more out there?
Um, so, I mean, I don't think any of those players are likely to get dealt. I think the players that are kind of mainly in discussion and probably most likely to be moved are the guys on expiring deals. So you look at Bruce Brown, who has a $23 million expiring salary, very attractive option to for teams either to get off of money or to use to facilitate trades. If the Raptors want to get in there as like a there's been a lot of talk about them getting in there as a third or fourth team to help make a Jimmy Butler trade work. Now with Aaron Fox out there as well, potential with that like could be applied to really any superstar who has a hefty contract and is going to be going somewhere. It's first reported by Doug Smith of the Toronto Star, of course. So yeah, I think guys like Bruce Brown, Chris Boucher's on a $10.8 million expiring. Davion Mitchell's on a $6.5 million expiring contract. So all those guys can kind of be used as ballast in those type of moves. Either for the Raptors to take on money and another team to get off stuff, and then maybe the Raptors get an asset in return. The other two names that I think are mentioned pretty frequently would be Kelly Olynyk, who still does have an additional year on his contract, and it makes a little bit less sense. But maybe some teams do see him as a big that could come off the bench and help them out. And then as far as like Jakob Poeltl, I don't see him. I don't think it's likely that he gets moved. I know the reporting that's been out there from Mark Stein, kind of a discussion from a lot of people around the team, has been that the Raptors would only really move him on their terms. They're not in a position where they're looking to move Jakob Poeltl. If they get a kind of Godfather offer, they'll probably have to include at least one lightly protected first round draft pick. Okay, then maybe they take a look at moving him. If it really seems advantageous for them. But he does so much around helping the team develop and fostering an environment like we've seen lately with how much they've been winning for young players to play the right kind of basketball and to develop in the right kind of ways. His screen setting is immaculate. He's got great footwork around the rim. He's a great connective piece. They run a ton of what they call delay action, where the big man holds the ball around the post, like high post, elbow extended area. Players cut off screens and move around him. And he's the one making those reads, a lot of like dribble handoff action, a lot of get action where it's to him and back to the player. So, yeah, I mean, I think Poeltl is so essential to a lot of what they do on both ends. So I don't think moving him really makes a ton of sense for the team. And again, unless it's just an offer you can't pass up.
Mm-hmm.
Last one for you, Ian. Obviously, we know how young this team is. We've mentioned and fans know of Scotty Barnes. They know the Grady Dicks. They know the RJs and the IQs. But who is a player on this roster that is a young player that has yet to develop, that you can see being someone that fans can really attach a name to and sort of fall in love with as this Raptors core gets a little bit older? Who's someone that is under the radar but is set to be a really big, maybe not superstar, but make a big impact for the Raptors in the future?
Wow, that's I'm unprepared for this, and that's a tough question to answer because there's quite a few options. Like
okay,
like Jacoby Walter's been really impressive, and you could see him having a pretty high ceiling as a pull-up shooter, as a movement shooter. He took an incredibly tough shot diet in college. The percentage wasn't crazy good. I think it was 34.7 or something like that. But like takes incredibly difficult shots. He seemed really comfortable settling into his mid-range so far with the Raptors, coming off his screens. He'll end up being a good shooter, I believe. He's got a ton of length on defense, and even though he looks kind of slight and like doesn't have a ton of weight on him, seems to really stick on the ball and be a pretty strong on-ball defender, pretty hard to shake. Jacoby Walter's super impressive. Jonathan Momo's been super impressive. I don't like to do comparisons. Honestly, basketball I think is more nuanced than that. But like people, compare to Draymond Green, he doesn't shoot a ton, but he's kind of that like small ball, that 4 or 5 kind of guy who can play make a lot. Great defender as well on the ball. I think the one I'm going to have to pick is Jamal Shed.
Yeah.
This Jamal, I mean, he's just so like, I mean, he's already drawn the Kyle Lowry comparison.
Yeah, like he's
he's cool. Like I mean, he generates a ton of which is something the Raptors haven't done a ton of defense here, but he generates a ton of turnovers on the ball. Like I remember seeing a number. This was a few weeks back, but he was 95th percentile in transition possessions added per 100. Because he just like
the turnover
fights through every single screen. He eats a ton of moving screens. He just seems to like have a really good sense. They call it nose for the ball, right? But just a really good feel for like where the ball is going on the court, to be able to get in there, pick off passes, beat guys to spots. Jamal there's the shed head movement, right? Everywhere, the shed that Jamal built. Jamal Shed has definitely kind of already gained a bit of a cult following. Shots come around too. He was shooting under 30% to start the season. And I guess they kind of made a slight tweak, his kind of basic push mechanics on his jump shot. And I guess he was a little bit off balance to one side. Ever since they've kind of made a fix on that, he's been hitting a ton more jump shots, a ton more threes, which would be honestly a huge swing skill for him kind of sticking in the league. I mean, a lot of guys with promise for the Raptors, a lot of rookies. You know what? I'd be remiss not to mention too quickly. I'm going to mention all 4 rookies, whatever. Jamison Battle is crazy, like a crazy shooter. I had a tweet about it a bit ago, but he shot like 67% in summer league, 65 in the preseason, and he was sitting around 44% between the Raptors and the G League this year. So his total across all 3, he was shooting like 48% on something like 180 attempts to start his professional career, which is like, that's like, it's not a huge sample, but like it's getting there.
Yeah,
it's nuts. It's nuts.
That's enough to say
Jameson's
like
crazy.
It's not just a fluke at this point. It might cool down a little bit, but like it's not like a fluke that this guy can shoot. So
he's been the best 3-point shooter on the Raptors this year as a rookie. So Jamison Battle's pretty sick too. So yeah, there you go. I'll say Jamal Shed my answer, but I gave you something on all.
I think they just nailed. I think they nailed this rookie class. Is what happened. They really lucked out, and that's gonna that helps.
Shout out over Chomche. Shout out over Chomche as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, you say you're unprepared, Ian, and then you go ahead and name all the players and some positives on all of them. So I don't know how you can even say that. No way to disappoint. That's our first guest from Sportsnet.ca, Ian Finlayson. Ian, thanks again for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Awesome. You as well.
Awesome. No, we'll get into cheering from the press box here. Just quickly, Justin, final segment. Who are you cheering for from the press box this week?
Marc-Andre Fleury is going to Montreal to play his final game. He's going to start. He didn't start last night against Toronto. I just had to remember who it was. He didn't start last night against Toronto, but he's going to start tonight, I believe January 30th. So huge game for him. Hometown. He's going to have like 100 people in the crowd. Special night for him. I hope that he has a great game, even though it's against the Montreal Canadiens.
Very fair. And I'm cheering for him as well. He's been Canada-centric and Canada-strong for so long. I'm going to cheer. We talked about him earlier. I'm going to cheer for Drew Doughty. Not necessarily for Team Canada 4 Nations, but just for his health and his success this year. And I didn't know this till recently looking it up, he's played 6 straight seasons of 82 games from, 2014 to 2019. So he's a workhorse. Tough to see him go down with that ankle injury in preseason. Happy he's back, and I just hope for his sake, he's successful in his recovery and kind of puts things to perspective. And maybe the Kings make a run. I know it'll likely be against the Oilers again, but I'm cheering for Drew Doughty to kind of bring back his success from his earlier in his career. Otherwise, great episode today. First guest with Ian. Talked a lot all over the episode here. And we're kind of happy to bring all this information to you. So like, subscribe, follow us on all of our social platforms. Second Look Sports, episode 7 in the books. From Justin, Sarah, Ian, and Alex. We'll see you next time.
Peace.